Some say he's a technical whiz. Some say he was born in Cornwall, while some say that he's on a journey. It's The Journey. And here's your host, David Hackett.
Hi everyone, welcome to another journey. And yes, I'm out of breath because time schedules, I always get sidetracked, but not to worry, we got another guest joining us today. She is Dr. Marni Hill, and I've got to get this right, Foderaro. I don't know if that's correct. And she is an award-winning and celebrated author, speaker, and educator. She earned a doctorate in education from Northern Illinois University and completed postdoctoral studies at Harvard during a very successful and rewarding 35-year career. And no doubt she'll tell us that when she tells us about her journey today. Welcome to The Journey.
Oh, thanks, David. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
No worries. And as I told you in the emails, it will also be on YouTube as well. So if any of your followers want to see the visual, there will be a visual as well as audio podcast.
Sure.
So as I said to you just before we started recording, tell us about your journey and where you were when you started your journey as a person.
You know, there's so many places to really start because I really do believe our journey is ongoing. But a big turning point in my life happened close to retirement. I was a high school special education teacher for 35 years in the Chicago suburbs. And 12 of those years, I was a university graduate school adjunct professor. And I was kind of going along, living the American dream, raising two beautiful children in the suburbs and, just enjoying, life. But at some point I had to make a very big choice when I really discovered that I was in a very unhealthy marriage. Actually, after leaving it, realizing that it was pretty abusive, emotionally, financially, in many ways. And so after 27 years of marriage, I chose to file for divorce and, really kind of naively believed that I could just, we could separate, part ways, be respectful. We had so many years together. I thought, gosh, we could at this point at least co-parent our two adult children. They were 20 and 23 at the time. But that wasn't the case. I really had to learn the hard way that in some situations with a malevolent partner who doesn't want the status quo changed, doesn't want you to escape or leave, they will do whatever they can to destroy you and take your home and your money and even your children. It's mind-boggling to the very loving, empathetic person. But just like all challenges that I've had in my life, and all of us have adversity that we have to face throughout our lives. That's part of the journey. I chose to handle it with love and compassion and honesty. And one thing I did find that, I was given a choice to stay or go in the area, the Midwest, and I believe you're in the Midwest too, right?
Well,
you're in Cleveland.
I'm near Cleveland, about 2 hours away from Cleveland.
Yeah. So you're in Ohio, and so the Midwest. But I moved to the Caribbean 3 years ago, and I waited until I retired from teaching. I had lost most everything, and it was kind of an opportunity in a way to, start again and decide what kind of life do I want for myself. And I wanted to be surrounded by nature, by God's beautiful earth. And the Caribbean is just a perfect place for me. I've found, real peace and happiness here in the Caribbean. And also, right before I left, I wrote a book when I had a garage sale and lost everything, called God Came to My Garage Sale. Just a spiritual fiction. Even though it was a fiction, it was inspired by true miracles that happened at a very dark time that I could have been sad or negative or angry. I was really filled with love and gratitude, and really, thankful for everything that I had been given, even though my adult children are not in my life, even now, a decade after, I escaped that marriage. I still am thankful for the time that I had with them, and just hoping that I gave them the foundation they need to just be on their journey and realize their potential. And so I, in coming to the Caribbean, found that writing was very healing for me. And I ended up writing a 5-book series called True Deceit False Love. And it brings awareness to help people understand, domestic violence and narcissistic abuse and parental alienation. And part of that whole journey is doing a lot of self-reflection, looking at yourself and what made you a target for an abuser, what made you an overgiver or a people pleaser or someone that didn't have strong boundaries. And I realized, I needed to make some changes just to surround myself with more like-minded individuals, so that I can just live a happier and more peaceful life. And so that is the journey that I've had. So like through some kind of false reality, thinking I was living in, happiness and realizing all my dreams, I realized that, what I thought was real wasn't necessarily real. And it wasn't really positive for me. And so making this change, I'm so thrilled that I had the opportunity and the courage and strength to try something new and move in a different direction.
Yeah. So you're saying about obviously abuse as a whole, and I know some types of abuse because myself, I've been through it, but obviously it's different for everyone involved. But
sure,
when you're in that situation, you like to believe, and I would assume you're the same, you would want to believe the better in that person, thinking they would change.
Yeah, correct? And not only I'm not out to change anyone.
No, but do you think, I'm not saying your potential ex-spouse, but just generally, when you're in that relationship, you're just open, they will change, not you changing them, they will change for themselves if they.
Right. Yeah, it's very hard to understand that there are people out there in the world that actually get pleasure out of harming other people, and that they really enjoy being manipulative and controlling, and they get some sort of satisfaction from that, and that's so not how so many of us are wired. So it's very foreign for us to understand the attachment disorders that other people might have. But yes, when you're going through it, you do all sorts of things, hoping that the situation will get better. And actually, there's so much intermittent reinforcement where there's some good times mixed with some very bad times. And so it keeps you kind of hooked. And you stay in abusive situations. And it can also be jobs for people that they stay in for decades when really that might not be the most healthy environment for them. Yeah. So it's relationships and jobs. And then when it comes to family, there's a whole nother dynamic there because, you really hope and pray that your family is the place for safety where they have your back and, that there's unconditional love there. But that's sometimes a very hard realization to know that that's not always the case, that there are some very unhealthy dynamics. There could be narcissism, there could be, controlling, backstabbing, all that kind of thing that can actually go on within families as well. And we have that societal expectation that, we need to stay in this family. We need to stay in this marriage. We will ignore all these negative things, these red flags. But at some point, maybe it's the older you get, the more you've gone through the journey, the more you realize you need to honor yourself too, just as you honor other people. And sometimes it's a matter of just stepping back or saying no, or saying this is not resonating with my values. And it takes a lot of courage to do something like that. It's not very easy, because we've so many times been conditioned almost, there's gaslighting involved, where we, start questioning our worth and our abilities and what we see and what we know and what we do. And we have to realize that that's a strategy that some people use. Even some friends use that kind of gaslighting strategy to build themselves up, to make you question yourself and isolate more, and kind of be more dependent. And then you stay stuck where it's not mutual respect. It's really a one-sided situation.
Yeah.
So it's very important to do that inner work, to self-reflect and realize, what are your passions? How do you want to live your life?
Yeah, because going to my situation, and I've always said to my guests, I do talk about my life as well, because sometimes I do resonate with certain things that have been said. But from my perspective, I was in that kind of relationship, and I'm not saying that person was bad for me, but at the same time, they kept making me believe I was the one for them. I was everything to them, made me believe everything. And it came to a point every so often, and it was a routine in the relationship, but I left where they were living, and I went back to where I lived in England. And then 6 months later, or a few months later, they tried to say, I love you, David. I love you, David. I want you back. This will change. This will change. And I'm thinking, yeah. And then in the end, I gave up, and I just went back. And that was a constant cycle. So 6 months with that person, 6 months away from that person. And I was in that constant loop, and there was no real relationship if it was in that constant loop, because what could I do? Because I believed that person was changing, and I believed that when they said to me, I want you, I believed that. I was young, but not young, but I was young.
Right. And actually, the older you get, you realize that the actions speak much louder than words, and it's very common to be in a cycle of abuse with another person, because the loving, empathetic person, believes in goodness. We almost project our own goodness onto others, and thinking, well, if we're very thoughtful about this and we would never hurt anyone intentionally, that other people are like that too. But we learn the hard ways that not everyone is wired that way. So it's a very common scenario, almost like they all follow the same playbook.
Yeah.
That, they rope you back in with that love bombing. And then as soon as they do, then the devaluation stage happens. And then the discard stage, whether they discard you or you get your light bulb moment and say, enough is enough. This is not right. And you step back. Either way, it is a cycle, and it's a very common cycle that happens to men and women that find themselves in relationships with an abuser.
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't actually realize it, like I said, until you actually officially do that, make that actual main break, not just the break, not the break after 6 months where you actually say enough is enough, and you actually do make that major step back.
Right, and the healing journey is a long one, but when people get to the point of where they can have a podcast or write a book or speak on, different subjects, or become a life coach and help other people. They've gotten to a point past self-actualization where they've realized what they've gone through, and they want to, lend their voice and talk about their stories in a candid way to help other people, so that maybe what you say might resonate with them, and you could save someone possibly from going down that road, because you're teaching them about the red flags to pay attention to. And that's why it's so important. And as an author, I didn't really set out to be an author of a 5-book series, about handling all this family trauma, relationship issues. It really came about as my own healing journey, and needing to do some research on personality disorders, and research on why bad things happen to good people, and what are some common red flags. And I found the terminology and phrases were so significant, because labeling something, putting a name to something, can help you make sense of it a little bit more. And then you know what to look up and research, and then it might connect you with other people that have, lent their voice and their services, or their writing to helping other people get through this. But yeah, that's a very common cycle that happens. But there does come a time when really that's the final straw, when you really step away. And in my case, the love bombing that you talked about, I actually experienced before I was married. So I was, I found out some things about this individual who I ended up marrying and staying with for 27 years. But, before we were married, I found out some things that, looking back now, would be such glaring red flags to make me never want to see this person again. But they're very skilled. We can't really beat up on ourselves, because these people are calculating. They are skilled manipulators, and they know exactly what to say and do to kind of rope you back in. And that kind of happened to me before we were married. And when I had already walked away saying, oh my gosh, you are so unethical. You are a liar. You are dishonest. You've got some big issues. And, I want nothing to do with it. But they come back into your life if there's any little opportunity, just to see if you would get roped back in. And most of us do. And because we're loving, and we like to believe the best in others.
Yeah, and the love is so pure from you as a person, and you want that pure love to be shared with them, and you expect that kind of same level back. And when, like you said, the behavior of them, when they do talk about, making you believe, you actually do think it's real.
Yeah.
Until you get out of it, you think it's real. But at the time, your mind, oh, they love me, they want me, they really changing, they really want the best. It's just I can't, I understand a bit of psychology, so I can understand it, but at the same time, what triggers their mind to think like that? And everyone says,
right.
Everyone says, and you probably would agree, probably past traumas, but that doesn't excuse for then. It excuse, what happened. Yes, happened. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But what happened. What happens as they grow up doesn't have to be defined by the way they were as they were younger. So
right, it's all a choice. People do have a choice, and what makes this so challenging is to know that these people intentionally harm other people. They know what they're doing. They're not, they might have been victimized, like you said, and they might have had baggage, past traumas that they brought in. Most likely they did, they've been taught to act this way out of their own survival, whatever it is, but it doesn't make an excuse for them to treat people this way. And, eventually I think things catch up with people. They have this mask that covers who they really are. And every now and then, without warning, that mask will just slip and you'll see the true colors of a person. And it all depends on where you're at in your journey, whether you pay attention to that mask slipping. And because so many times, we're oblivious to it, or we make excuses, or, we stay for some of the wrong reasons, or sometimes we think we're staying for the right reasons. In my case, I had two beautiful children to be concerned about.
So you had to think about the children.
Yeah, definitely. And it's mind-boggling that after I escaped the situation, because these kids, they know which parent lies, cheats, and steals, and which parent doesn't. I mean, they're smart children, but they're also trauma bonded and stuck in the abuse cycle themselves. And I'll tell you, learning about parental alienation, just the research on it, really helped me understand the dynamics. And it took some of the pain away. I mean, of course, there's always going to be a hole in your heart when you don't have your children in your life. But at the same time, we're very different people now. It's been almost a decade. And they've got their journey to go through too. And, you'd like to save them from the abuse, because parental alienation is considered child abuse, as it is intimate partner violence, but the research on it has really helped me understand how something like this could happen to a wonderful mom or a wonderful dad.
So going to now, as you see yourself now, do you feel writing these books you would want to write more to the series, or would you want to just leave it as that and see how people...
That is, what a great question. I actually have a 6th book in the series, and I look at that as a final book in the series, True Deceit False Love. And I'm not quite sure. I've got a couple ideas of what to focus on. Definitely I've been encouraged to focus on financial abuse, because that continues long after you leave an abuser, that you've been financially abused during the relationship, and then as you're leaving, and then definitely after you have left. And, but then again, I think I might focus on just memories that I have that are positive and loving with my children. So I've got a couple directions to go with that book. But it's interesting you would ask this question, because I'm really winding down my podcast interviews. I've actually turned down numerous opportunities, because really I'd like to focus on some new things in the new year. And I've got a lot of other projects that I'm excited about, some involving writing and some others that are not. And so I think that's part of the journey too. Like, okay, it was very healing to get this 5-book series out these past 3 years, to speak on spirituality, to speak on surviving abuse of others. It's been a wonderful journey in a way. I almost, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's almost like I thank my abuser or abusers, because there's other players in the mix, the regime, the village, the flying monkeys, the friends that, you thought were always there, the neighbors that you had a good relationship with for years that are, completely out of your life. And, when you realize, okay, you've gone through all of these things, and I chose to handle it with love and with words, and just, healing, but also helping others understand what they've gone through. And now I'm ready for another chapter in my life. And so I'm excited about what's to come next month and the next year.
Because I will explain how it was for me. And incidentally, the podcast wasn't even part of my ethos when I started this idea, but 12, yeah, I'm trying to think, yeah, it was 12 years ago, I believe, or something like that anyway. But my grandmother died, and obviously I always relied on my grandmother for a lot of support, more than my own mother. And that's no disrespect against my mother, but I relied on my grandmother for so much. And she always said, do something good, do something amazing, make a difference. So I followed that through, and originally it was just me just wandering around, helping people, started a Facebook. I know you're not on social media, but I got a Facebook page dedicated just to inspiring people. I got a blog that's dedicated to inspiring people. And that was in the ethos of just doing something good. Now, since the pandemic hit, and I think it was just before the pandemic hit, I thought, I got a computer, I didn't have what I got now. I haven't got a microphone, I haven't got headphones. I just had an iPad, and obviously other tablets available, but I wanted to start talking to people about their lives, because I wanted to, and this is how I word it now, I wanted to inspire, I wanted to amuse, I wanted to educate people. So the pandemic came along, and the opportunity was there, and in the last year it's been on and off because I had a full-time job, and then I couldn't do it as much, but I still kept the interviews what I had from when I did do them, and I thought, why not carry on educating? Why not carry on amusing? Why not carry on inspiring people? Because the journey doesn't end abruptly because of one particular thing. It carries on. So the way this story is maybe different to the next story I listen to, but it helps people. And that's what my late grandmother wanted. She wanted me to help people. She said, do something good on computers. This is doing something good on computer. I'm talking to you now. I'm in America.
Right. And you're connecting with people all over the world and having these candid conversations, just like, you're sitting down with someone having a cup of tea or something and just chatting. But we know we are making connections with others out there in the world that can resonate with the stories, or if not the actual situations, they resonate with the idea that we can all have challenges in our lives, but it's a journey, and we have the power to choose how we want to handle these challenges.
And now I see your cover next to you now about God Came to My Garage Sale. I like the cover of that, because it looks like it's a garage sale, obviously, and then you see the clouds of heaven, as I call it. And some people say there's no clouds in heaven, and it's just misconception. But there is something defined there, and if it's spiritually, it's spiritually. If it's in a faith way, it doesn't matter. That's how you defined it when you saw God come to your garage sale.
Yeah.
So the clouds came to your garage and it entered you and filled you, I feel.
Well, I'll just tell you, good things can happen out of challenging situations. A lot of it depends on our perspective and how we want to look at it, and what we do with what we're given. Just like you were, given an opportunity to hear from your grandmother, to do something very good for others. And that kind of evolved into your podcast. And, the connections and the messages you're giving are life-changing for people. And so that's, if we can connect with even just one person, that's very important. And, we all need support. I have found a lot of support in God. I believe that I am divinely protected, or else how could I have gone through some of the things that I went through and still have a smile on my face and still have hope for the next day?
Yeah. So we spoke about the past, we spoke about present, and obviously we get on to where you can get your books from in a minute. But where would you want to see yourself and you probably touched upon it when we spoke about prison, where would you want to see yourself in, say, a few years' time, next year, whenever? I know you said about slowing down and taking time for yourself. So is that where you're?
Well, I'm thrilled and very fortunate to live on many acres in the rainforest of the U.S. Virgin Islands in the Caribbean. And so there's always something to do. We're doing what we can to be kind of off-grid, self-sufficient. So I have extensive gardens that I would like to learn and cultivate more. They're very different than the Midwest gardens and what you can grow and how you can grow things. So I have a lot to learn, and a lot of it's trial and error, but it's a lot of fun being out in nature. And of course I have some other writing projects to do. And, I'm a big fan of world travel, of seeing the world and connecting with people from all different walks of life. And, so I'm going to be doing some of that. And I always enjoy reading and creating. So I'm someone who could never really be bored, because I always have something interesting that I'd like to do.
So that's how I see myself in well, not straight right now, but I know I will see myself, and it's like, I know I'll get there, but it's just getting there. And maybe the podcast series will be the start where I will actually say, I've made a difference. I've made my mark in that. You Google my name. Yeah, I am somewhere there if you Google it, but it's not the bigger footprint. The bigger footprint's when you've made that difference. Yeah. I believe. So last of all, because obviously time's going away with us so quickly, where can you get your books from?
All my books are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. My publisher is Balboa Press, which is a division of Hay House. But they're just a click away, very reasonably priced. And if money is tight for people, all the e-versions are $3.99. So, if you're interested in...
That's US dollars, because I know in different countries there'd be different prices.
Yes. So it's US dollars, yes. But so my website is www.godcametomygarage sale.com. And on my website, you can read about my books, the people that have endorsed my books. In the happening section, I kind of highlight what I've done, what I've been up to, book signings, speaking engagements, different podcast interviews. And I also highlight other people and their work and put some inspirational messages there as well.
Okay. So the last ultimate question, what would you say to someone now if someone came up to you and said, tell me, what can I do? What would you say to that? So what can it doesn't have to be a specific subject. That's why I said, what can I do? That leaves it open-minded for.
Yeah, I would just say to anyone, just follow your passions and stay true to your values. Whatever your values are, stay true to them. And we have what's called a gut intuition, when we're feeling that we should go in a certain direction, or we should, say yes or no to a certain situation. Follow your gut feeling, because it's really, whatever you want to call it, whether it's just your inner voice or whether it's your higher self, trying to steer you in the right direction. But stay true to your values, follow your gut intuition, and pursue your passions.
Marni, thank you for sharing your journey. May every blessing continue and successfully continue with you. And from the listeners, watchers, wherever they are listening, we thank you.
Well, thanks, David.
That was The Journey, hosted by Wise Words Imaging, hosted by David Hackett. Be sure to like, subscribe and listen to another journey coming soon.